Hi, I'm Ashley, and today I'm going to share my application of the health belief model to my learning of this week's lesson. The health belief model construct that I'm focusing on is called perceived barriers. In the context of the Building Resilience, How to Embrace and Use Criticism lesson, perceived barriers means identifying the obstacles that might prevent me from accepting feedback, such as fear of failure, ego interference, or perfectionism. This activity requires me to list any barriers that prevent me from embracing feedback, reflect on how these barriers might hold me back, and consider how I might overcome them. The first reflection question is, what internal barriers, such as fear of failure, defensiveness, or perfectionism, make it difficult for you to accept feedback? One internal barrier that I've struggled with when it comes to accepting feedback is defensiveness. When someone points out something that I could improve on, I sometimes take it more personally than I should and assume that it's a criticism of my abilities. That usually turns into me scrambling to explain myself rather than really listening to others. When that happens, it becomes harder for me to recognize that the feedback I'm getting might genuinely help me improve. The second reflection question is, how does your ego or desire to protect your self-image interfere with your ability to embrace constructive criticism? So when I think about how my ego or desire to protect my self-image affects my ability to accept constructive criticism, I notice that sometimes I struggle to hear feedback without feeling personally judged. One example of this is when another parent or even a friend comments on my parenting decisions. Something as simple as suggesting a different approach to handling my child's behavior. Even if their intention is supportive, I can feel myself tense up and immediately want to defend myself. Instead of taking a moment to consider their feedback and think that it might be useful or helpful, my instinct is to protect my self-image as a capable mother. This reaction makes it harder for me to fully hear or learn from what's being shared. The third reflection prompt is, in what ways have these barriers held you back from learning or growing, either personally or professionally? When I think about how these barriers have held me back from learning or growing, I can see how the defensiveness has affected my relationships. For example, there was one time when a close friend of mine tried to talk to me about how I had reacted during a disagreement that we had. She told me that my tone came across as dismissive and that it hurt her feelings. So instead of really listening to her, I immediately felt the need to defend myself and explain why she was misinterpreting the situation. Because I was so focused on protecting my self-image, I wasn't able to acknowledge her perspective in that moment. Looking back, I realized that I missed an opportunity to understand her experience, repair the conflict more effectively, and grow from the feedback that she was trying to share. The last reflection prompt is, what specific strategies can you adopt to overcome these barriers and be more open to feedback in the future? So, to overcome these barriers and become more open to feedback, I want to be more mindful that feedback is meant to support my growth, not point out my flaws. Shifting my mindset to view it as something constructive can help me approach it with more openness. When I remind myself that the intent is to build me up rather than to tear me down, I'm better able to set aside defensiveness and engage with the feedback more thoughtfully. Thank you for joining me as I model this process, and good luck with your reflections.